Good morning, dear primary 6 students of St. Joseph's International School. In these videos, we are going to discuss primary 6 science curriculum. And first, let's take a quick look at what our curriculum is going to be talking about. So, as you can see, we have two themes. Theme 1 is talking about systems and what is a system. First, we discuss the cell as a system. So we're going to be learning how the cell can be a system, and then the body as a system, the whole body as a system. So after learning what the cell is, we're going to discuss the whole body, and then energy as a system, which is going to be concept 3 in theme 1. In theme 2, we are talking about matter and energy, and how can we get energy. So first we discuss thermal energy and the state of matter in concept 1 in theme 2, and then we discuss a specific thing about heat, which is a very specific thing in thermal energy, which is heat transfer, how heat transfers from one point to another. So let's begin with theme 1, unit 1, which is talking about systems. So, as we said, concept 1 is going to be the cell as a system. So we have two key words here, cell and system. So let's begin with the first, system. What is a system? Well, it's a very important thing to know this in the next three concepts because it's a repeating theme. A system is anything that has steps or parts making up a whole thing. For example, a computer. A computer has many different parts. Each part has its own function to do. The whole thing makes up the computer with all its functions, with all the things that it can do. Calculating things, playing video games, reading books. You can do many things on a computer. So that's why you can call it a system, because it contains many parts making up a whole thing. And now we need to know how can the cell be a system. Well, first we need to know what a cell is. So I need you to look at this part. So when you look at these two pictures, what do you see? We see here a house that's made up of different blocks. And each block on its own, you can't get much out of it. You can't live or you can't use it. But together, they made up a big house where you can live. Good. In this picture here you see that each block doesn't make anything on its own, but together they made up a pyramid, or they make up a ship or a plane or anything. So these small parts, we call them the building unit of the whole figure. Right? Excellent. So now, to living organisms like animals, plants, and humans, living organisms, all of them share one thing, and it's that they have a very small building unit, which is called the cell. So the cell it's the main building unit of the living organism's body that carries out all its vital activities. And now we have a new word, vital activities. What's a vital activity? Well, a vital activity is anything that you need to do to survive. For example, breathing, digestion, seeing, vision, uh, heart beating. The heart, when it beats, this is a very vital activity. You can't live without it. Thinking, smelling, all of these are carried out by cells. And cells only exist in living organisms' bodies, and they can't exist in a non-living thing. Another important thing about cells is that they are very, very small, that they can't be seen by the naked eye, and we need something to see them through, which is the microscope. Exactly. So now, let's try these questions. We'll try it wrong. Number one, microscopes are used to see the structure of the cell. Is that true or false? Well, I need you to, before we answer, I need you to try and answer before I do. So this way, you know that you can answer things on your own, and then you check with my answer. So number one again, microscopes are used to see the structure of the cell. Now pause and answer and check. Well, the answer, of course, is true. Now, living organisms and non-living things are made up of cells. Is that true or false? That's false, of course. Why? Because non-living things do not have cells. Good. We know now that cells are the building units of living organisms, and they have two main types. Animal cells, which are the cells found in animals and humans, and plant cell, which are the cells found in the plant body or the plant's structure. Good. And living organisms, we can divide them into two types. Living organisms that have only one cell, like that, like amoeba, bacteria, paramecium, and so on. All of these, they only have one cell, and we call them unicellular organisms. Or they are multicellular organisms, which are the organisms that have more than one cell, such as plants or animals. Good. Most cells are tiny. Tiny meaning they are very small. They can be seen with the naked eye. How tiny? Well, they are between 0.1 millimeters and 0.005 millimeters, which is very small. Even the ant, which is very small, is made up of cells, so you can imagine how small cells are. So this is why we need a microscope to see them. But one kind of cell is big enough to be seen with the naked eye, which is the unfertilized bird egg. An unfertilized bird egg is a bird egg before it's fertilized, which means that it's ready to give a new chicken or a new bird. And you can open up an egg and you can see it, which is a part of the yolk or the yellow part of the egg. Another example of unicellular organisms is bacteria, of course, because it contains one cell only. So let's check our understanding. Most of living organisms' cell can be seen without using a microscope. Is that true or false? Well, that's false, of course, because we need microscopes to see cells. The other question, the cell is the building unit of living organism's body. Well, that's true. Good. Now let's talk about something important for everything new that we learn, which is the characteristics of cells. Well, they have four main characteristics. Number one, all cells have a cell membrane. Well, what is a cell membrane? It's the part that surrounds the cell. And both animal and plant cells have it. We're going to discuss all the cell parts in detail later on in next lessons. Well, now, not all cells have a cell wall. It exists only for plant cells. What's a cell wall? It's an extra layer that surrounds the plant cell to protect it and give it a definite shape. Most cells have a nucleus, but not all of them. For example, the red blood cell in the human body, or in most animals, it doesn't have a nucleus. Finally, the cells of one living organism are not identical. For example, the human body, it has different types of cells. We have the muscle cell, we have the blood cell, the red blood cell, the bone cell, which looks like this, the nerve cells or the nervous cells. So all of these have different shapes and different functions. Good. Let's check our understanding again. True or false? Increasing the size of cells causes the growth of a living organism. Is that true or false? When your cells have a large size, does that mean you can grow? Well, that's false. Because the size is not the issue, but it's the number of the cells. So the more cells you have, this means the bigger the body. But the size is not the important factor here. All the cells of living organisms contain a cell wall. Again, that's false. Because cell walls exist only in plant cells, but all cells have a cell membrane. Good. Now, what does a cell need to survive? What does it need? It needs three things. Number one, it needs oxygen and nutrients, and it also needs water. So the cell needs three things to continue on living, to exist. Food, which we call nutrients, and we get that through the digestive system and the blood. And it also needs oxygen to survive. We will see why later. And it needs water. Well, how does water get into the cell? Through the cell membrane. That's why all cells need to have the cell membrane, because this is the part that allows water to come in and out of the cell. Good. Well, how does the body grow? For example, you have a baby, and you have seen babies. They are very small, right? But then they grow up to become adults, and they get larger and larger and larger. So how did this happen? How did the baby become an adult? How did the baby chicken become a hen, an adult hen? How did the kitten become a cat? Through something called cell division. All living organisms start as one cell. This one cell divides itself into two identical cells. These two cells divide and become 4. 4 become 8, 8, 16, 32, 64, and so on and so on and so on, until we have millions and billions of cells inside our bodies, and this causes us to become adults, to grow. So increasing the number of the cells, not the size, is how we grow. Let's finally check our understanding for lesson 1. And now we have true or false again. Cells need nutrients and oxygen only to survive. Is that true or false? Well, that's false, because it needs 3 things: nutrients, oxygen, and water. Okay, question number 2. Increasing the number of cells means the formation of new cells. Well, yes. This is how we increase the number, and this is how we grow. Okay. Now for lesson 2. We said that the cell is very small, right? And it needs, you can't see it using your own eyes, right? So how do we see it? We said that we can see it through the microscope. And the microscope was invented in the 17th century. Exactly in 1665, that's almost 400 years ago, a scientist called Robert Hooke used his microscope to observe the tiny particles of some samples of the plant. And he was the one to call these particles the cell. So Robert Hooke knew that he can't see the cells. And he put the plants under the microscope, and he saw that they have tiny chambers, and he called them the cell. Good. Later on, when we invented more advanced microscopes, the modern microscope, we could tell many things. First, that the nucleus found inside many cells. That we knew that there is another part inside the cell that's called the nucleus, and it exists in most cells. We also learned that different parts of the cell and the functions. We learned that different parts inside the cell have different functions. Well, we also found that the cell is the building unit of all living organisms, and that the body of some simple living organisms consists of one cell only. Another important thing is that the body of living organisms contains complex systems that have different functions. And even different types of cells exist in the same body. As we said, the human body has bone cells, muscle cells, nerve cells, which we call neurons. So we have different kinds of cells doing different functions. Okay. So now let's see what we understood so far. Scientists can base all their researches between each other. So can they Robert Hooke? Of course not. Exchange information? Well, yes. So this is the first one. The first scientist who discovered the cell was Robert Hooke or the modern microscope? Well, of course, it's Robert Hooke. Different parts of the cell and their functions can be observed using the modern microscope. Well, yes. Now, let's see the structure and the parts of the microscope. Well, it has first the eyepiece. This is where you look. And now it has the tube, which extends and enlarges the image. And we have lenses like any kinds of lens, they enlarge the small things to make them seen. And we have the stage where we put something called the stage clip. Using a stage clip, we put something called a slide, like this. This is where we put the small things that we have to see itself. And we have a mirror. Some other microscopes have, instead of a mirror, they have a lamp to illuminate this part to make the cell seen. That's why we call it the illuminator. Illuminator, it means the thing that lights up. And of course we have the base. And we have two very important things, which are the coarse and the fine focus, which are used to get a proper image of the cell. And we have the arm to hold the whole microscope from. Well, in the lab, in the school, you can do this activity. We have an onion and we have forceps to get a small piece of an onion, and we have a dropper and a glass slide. So first, using the forceps, you get a small membrane or a small part of an onion, and then you put it on the glass slide, and then you add a drop of water or maybe iodine, and then you cover using the cover slip. You cover the slide. Then you put the whole slide on the microscope stage and fix it with the stage clip. Then you choose the proper lens to look through the eyepiece. And then you use the coarse and the fine focus to get the clear image of the cell. Well, we have two types of cells, of objective lens. The low power objective lens and the high power objective lens. The low power makes you see cells in small size, but you can see a large number of cells in fewer details. Using the high power objective lens, you can see the cells in bigger size with more details. Good. So now, microscopes form magnified images for cells. Is that true or false? Well, that's true, of course. Magnified means enlarged, larger. Next, lenses are main components in the structure of the microscope. Are they the main components or one of the main components? So they are one of the main components, of course, not the main component. Good. Now in lesson 3, we are going to discuss the cell parts. So we're going to discuss the structure of the animal cell and the structure of the plant cell in the next lesson. So we are going to keep this for the next video. See you next time. And of course, if you have any questions, you can always ask using the website, or you can always ask your teacher. See you next time.